Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Interactive Careers panel. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. My name is Alexandra Theroux. I am the Operations Coordinator for the Community Sector Council of Nova Scotia. And I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge that while we are not gathered in person, we are still connecting with you virtually from Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which the Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik Maliseet people first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was going to be an ongoing relationship between nations. So before we get started, I'd also like to go over just a few housekeeping notes. As you joined today, you've likely already noticed that you're in listen-only mode. So we do this to minimize some of the background noise. When we get to the question and answer period, you will have the opportunity to submit questions. You can do so by going to the question panel over in your control panel, which is likely to the right-hand side of your screen, or you can raise your hand, and when there is a break in the speaking, Paula will call on you and we can unmute you at that point so you can ask your question. We will be watching for your questions throughout the panel, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible. However, we may not get to them all as time is limited. And finally, we are recording today's presentation, so you will all receive a copy of that recording via email tomorrow, and it will be made available on our website for future reference. So thanks very much, and with that, I'm just going to hand it over to my colleague Paula Mcphee, and I will be on in the background in case any of you run into any technical difficulties.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks, Alexandra. I'm Paula Mcphee, and I'm the Career Pathways Coordinator with the Community Sector Council of Nova Scotia, and I'll be moderating our panel today. So I just have a few opening remarks, and then we're going to begin with our panelists. So first off, I want to thank our four panelists for graciously volunteering their time today to share their stories about their work in the nonprofit sector for the benefit of our students joining. I also want to welcome the students that are here today. Appreciate your time and taking time to come today and hear about the nonprofit sector. Today we have joining us four panelists, and they're going to take turns in just a moment sharing their stories. We have Sarah Napier from the United Way of Halifax. We have Allison O'Hanley from the Dartmouth Learning Network. We have Heather McDonald of the Mcphee Center for Creative Learning, and Kara Chisholm from We Are Young. So just before our panelists begin to share their stories, I have two brief slides with some stats or data surrounding the nonprofit sector here in Nova Scotia to share with you. There's 6,000 organized nonprofit organizations across our province, and there's 20,000 people currently employed in this sector. So it's the same size as the financial services and transportation sector, and it contributes 1.7 billion annually to the GDP in direct and indirect and induced contributions. So that gives you a sense of the scope and impact of the sector. And then my second slide I have to share today kind of talks about the opportunities in the sector. So Nova Scotia has an aging population, and every sector in the economy is going to face challenges recruiting and retaining skilled university and college graduates to fill needed positions. So our second slide here that Alexandra is going to put up for me shows the graph of how many workers to retirees we're currently looking at. So you can see in 1980, for every 10 retirees in Atlantic Canada, there were 24 young workers to fill those positions. And then if you fast forward to 2020 data, for every 10 retirees, there's 7 young workers to fill that position. So what the data is telling us is that there's more positions than young workers to fill them. So there's loads of opportunity in the sector. So one last point I have in my opening remarks is the questions will be occurring at the end after all 4 panelists have had a chance to share their stories. So you can raise your hand, and Alexandra behind the scenes will see that you've raised your hand, or you will be typing a question. So she'll see those and then she'll forward them to me. So we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can, but we may not be able to get to all of them. So without further ado, we'll start with our panelists. So we'll start with Allison O'Hanley from the Dartmouth Learning Network. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing your story.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Paula. My phone was ringing just as you were introducing me, so I was like, make everything quiet. Yeah. All right. So it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. I was excited to take part in this conversation for a couple of reasons. The first one was that I didn't originally intend to be in the nonprofit world. I went to university and studied marine biology and worked as a researcher in marine biology for a little while, and very quickly realized, hey, this isn't for me, and move forward. So if I can help anybody form their career path a little clearer than what it took me to form mine, I'm very happy to do so. So again, I'm Allison O'Hanley. I'm with the Dartmouth Learning Network. We provide upgrading for adults to improve their reading, their writing, their math, their computer skills, everything from learning to read to the equivalent of getting their GED or that equivalent level of learning. We have lots of volunteers who volunteer with us on a regular basis, and paid staff who support those people as well. I'm the executive director here, and I've been here for about almost 5 years now as the executive director. What attracted me to the job, I've been in the nonprofit sector for about 20 years, and I started out as a youth worker and then became the manager of that program that I worked in, and then bounced around doing mostly administrative things and training and education and HR related things. So I was attracted to making things better and improving things, as well as working with people and interacting with people, and learning and education and development was always somewhere part of my career process. So I actually had a plan for where I wanted to be in 5 years, and I took a job that was temporary, and got pregnant while I took that temporary position. I was planning to use it as a stepping stone to move forward in that organization, but life took me in a different path, and I found myself a year later with no job to return to after spending a year with my daughter. So I applied for this job on a whim. It was my 5-year plan to be an ED, and I applied for this job on a whim and got it, and panicked because I thought, oh my God, I'm not ready. So, but yet here I am, and they've kept me 5 years later, so I must have done something right. As an ED, my roles really vary from day to day. Right now I'm cleaning toilets as part of COVID to make sure everybody's safe and stable. So that's, you never know what you're going to be doing from day to day, and it changes from day to day depending on what's happening, and also depending on who you're working with. So the more vulnerable the population that you're working with, the more I think diverse your day is from day to day, and you never really know what you're going to be dealing with or what's going to be happening. But in general, I'm responsible for everybody's safety and well-being while they're at work, for my employees, while they're learning, for the students that come to Dartmouth Learning Network, and while they're volunteering, for the volunteers who come here. I'm also responsible to ensure that they're learning and they're developing, and they're doing so in an effective and efficient way. I'm responsible to our partners and to the public to make sure that the money we receive from government, which is your taxpayer dollars, is well managed and financed, or well managed and overseen. I'm the public voice of Dartmouth Learning Network, so if there's opportunity to advocate for our learners for change, or for change within the adult learning system, if there's opportunities to promote or raise awareness of issues, it's me who steps forward. That's not my favorite part of the job. And I'm also responsible for carrying out the vision and the mission and the strategic plan of the board of directors that I report to. So that's my quick summary. I'm anxious to hear everybody else's summary too, so I get a feel if I hit it if I'm doing what I'm really supposed to be doing, because that's the fun part of working in the nonprofit, is there's a lot of flexibility and creativity, and not always all the supports you need all the time. So you really have the opportunity to create your own job and test yourself and experiment and see how things work. And that's part of what I really like about it. Sometimes you fail and fail miserably, and you have to own that. But sometimes you're successful and things go really well, and it's a lovely experience. I mentioned I'm improvement and process focused, so I really enjoy making things better and work better. I have to sometimes take time to recognize, like, oh, here's all the good things we're doing, because I'm always looking at what are the things we could be doing better and what should we be focusing on. So that's a real lesson for me that I have to work on. I love working with people, both the people I work with who are my staff and my coworkers, as well as with the people that we support at Dartmouth Learning Network and throughout my career as well. And in terms of, I guess, thinking about what you might want to know, or what message I can impart to you in terms of choosing nonprofit as a career, I think for me, if you enjoy flexibility, if you're a creative thinker, if you're a creative problem solver, if you want to be involved in the social justice issues of the day and the social issues of the day, and ongoing, it's a really neat place to be and a really awesome place to be. You form some amazing relationships, you meet really amazing people. You are humbled every day by the brilliance of both the people that, and brilliance and resilience of the people that you work with and work for. And it's really awesome, I guess, for lack of a better word to explain it. So you're humbled on a day-to-day basis, and you walk away thinking, wow, there's so much more I need to learn. There's so much more I need to know. There's so much more I can do, and that needs to be done at the same time. So if you enjoy that type of lifestyle and that type of flexibility and environment, it's a great place to work. And I've probably done that in like 3 minutes instead of 7, Paula. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, that's fine. That's lovely. That leaves time for some questions and discussion. So that's brilliant. Thanks again. And so I'll welcome our next speaker. So we'll, Heather McDonald, if you'd like to take a turn now, that would be brilliant. You could introduce yourself and your organization and your role, and then we're looking forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me on the panel. And it's nice to I don't see any of the students, but it's nice to see I'm alumni of 2 of them at 2 universities. So welcome. I won't tell you which one I'm more biased towards, but that's okay for another day. But I am the executive director for the Mcphee Center for Creative Learning. We're located downtown Dartmouth, but we are running programs across the HRM and are looking at pan-provincial growth. And what we do is we work and empower youth ages 12 to 19 who are maybe disengaged from home, from school, from community, from themselves. So we are in part supporting youth through school and getting through to graduation, but also through significant mental health issues and coping mechanisms. But we do all this through creativity. So rather than it being focused on more literal or firm teaching styles, we're very much focused on what can you create and focusing on the both performing and visual and technology arts. So a little bit of what we do, a little bit unorthodox in terms of how our schools and classrooms and homes are constructed in some ways. But let me back up a little bit, because I started in nonprofit when I was about 16 in an organization some of you from Nova Scotia might recognize as the NSSA, which is Nova Scotia Secondary School Students Association. So I was very involved in that. I was a big nerd in leadership, specifically around servant leadership. And I would have to say that is a big thread throughout my whole career so far is working through for service of others that may need it. And then went on to Acadia and did recreation management, which taught me so much around community development. I grew up in a town that didn't even have a rec center. For a lot of for a lot of people, that's a home base for community, and Truro's now got one, and it's very exciting. But that was a big, totally new thing to me, is the idea of community wellness and individual wellness, and how that go hand in hand, and how can you support folks and meeting with them where they're at. Started at a large organization, and a large organization internationally, which was the YMCA and fundraising. And I somehow landed that gig right out of university. I was quite excited, and also still blown away that I still got the gig. But it was in fund development, and I learned so much because of such a large organization that I could take references from other associations across Canada and across the US. And then I went a little bit more medium into junior achievement, which was more in the educational Nova Scotia capacity, and then dabbled a little bit into corporate. I was doing my MBA at SMU, and I was kind of thrown off by all the people in my class who were all corporate. And Sarah, you probably relate to this in your class at SMU, but just kind of got this screen or something over my head, and I was like, I must be in corporate. There's something there I'm missing if I'm in business MBA, and quickly ran back to the nonprofit charity world. It wasn't enough for me. A nonprofit, I feel, especially in a leadership role or any role I've taken on, I feel there's a pie, and in the nonprofit world or in the for-profit world, sometimes you just get a sliver of that pie. In terms of what you're doing, there may be lots of resources and lots of people to do many jobs, but in the nonprofit world, you get the whole pie. You get to do everything from mailouts to talking with donors to talking with community on the ground to future strategic leader, and it's awesome that way. And that's something that's always attracted me to the nonprofit world. Is it's very entrepreneurial in that way. You get to do everything in a lot of ways. Sometimes not what you were planning to do, but I feel I've become a better person because of that. I've certainly learned a lot. For a long time, I was the person that could work the projector, and the only person that could work the projector at the Y. So that's just a small example, but something that's a skill set I wouldn't have never picked up. Website development, financial resources and management, all of those things have come from, well, we've got to figure this out together as a team. We don't necessarily have the big resources to hire someone to do that. Let's figure it out. And I'm a firm believer in lifelong learning, and nonprofit has allowed me to play, learn, grow, to Allison's point, fail and succeed at the same time. So with the Mcphee Center, I just hit my 5-year anniversary, and it's been quite remarkable to watch the organization grow. And one of the biggest things that attracted me to the Mcphee Center is that when I started, it was more of an idea. Like they had did a bit of piloting and programming around youth in the Dartmouth North community, but it was a lot of ideas and a lot of passion, but not a lot of execution yet. So that was something that I gravitate towards. I'm not necessarily an idea person. I'm more the let's get it done. How are we going to do it? So the youth development and the community wellness side really, really interested me. And then also creating something new. So my key responsibilities have definitely changed over time. So when I started in 2015, I was the only staff with a board that was transitioning out, and just definitely someone who needed to eat the whole pie and embrace the whole pie as much as you wanted to. I was doing program development as well as budgets and so on and so forth. And so now there's more leadership and strategic planning and more governance-based work that I'm doing now that we have a staff of 4, and I'm doing a lot of more administrative stuff, which I try to limit to make sure, or try to be as efficient as possible to make sure that I can be working on the organization versus in it. So I can be working on the next steps and the next processes and what our strategic plan and a vision from the board and from our volunteers have outlined. And then marketing is something I really admire. And part of marketing is not necessarily just the billboards or the Facebook ads. It's the development, it's the stakeholder relationship side of things. And that's something I really appreciate about my role as well, is that I can wear many hats in a given day. So I might have a meeting with a major donor or someone who's looking to give in the morning, and then in the evening there might be a show happening, a all ages rock show happening at the center. So there's a lot of flipping and back and forth, and I've always really appreciated that because it keeps things exciting. And then I find in the nonprofit world, there's energy, and the word I can think about is like a thrill to be around and engaged with people that are there most of the time for the right reasons. So most of the time, people don't go to nonprofit for compensation, if you will. It's the idea that we firmly believe in the mission and what we're trying to do, and that may change over time. But the idea of wanting to improve our society is significant. So. And be it if a small impact or a big impact, there's still that thrill to be able to achieve and grow and develop and serve. And so what I might say to someone who's considering the nonprofit world, the biggest thing that got me into my first real job, if you will, at a university was volunteering. So my volunteer experience was diverse enough that I could get a job that was a manager role right out of universities, but that all came from volunteering. That wasn't necessarily something that I got paid to do. It's something that I was passionate about. So find those organizations or find something you're passionate about and dive in and see what you can learn. The other thing from a school perspective, if there's any classes in terms of strategic planning at Acadia, there's a beautiful one in the community development program. Community development, what does that mean, and how might you get involved with it? The more harder, more I guess square topics that aren't necessarily my forte, but I've learned is finance and fund development, and those are key things. I had to go to NSCC after university because I didn't know enough about finance, and once you can relate it to something you like, it's much easier to learn. And then organizational sustainability. So Kristen Williams is now a doctorate, but she's the CEO of Junior Achievement, and she just her master's is all about sustainability for an organization and what does it take to be sustainable. She looks at the financial side, the finances side, but also the impact and the organizational development. And it's not a lofty or hefty piece of work, but I would recommend it in terms of if you're interested in what it takes. And there's a lot of similar things to business. And then two more things I would say, and please cut me off because I can talk forever, but consider the differences. One thing I didn't really realize till later after I left the Y, but there's the different size of an organization can actually tell you how much leadership you can take, how much impact you can make, how much you can dive in and learn and learn as you go as fast as you can. And whereas some of the larger organizations, a lot of the systems and processes have been ongoing for a long time. So I was really appreciative at the front end to be with a larger organization because I could learn from other people. Whereas now I'm in an organization that we're creating processes and developing and setting precedent as we go. So that was something I didn't really consider when I first took on a career in the nonprofit, was that there's medium and large size organizations. And the other beautiful part about organizations and nonprofit is we generally love to share. So there is a competition, sometimes more collaborative, I'd say, around fund development and raising funds because we need to keep all of our doors open. However, collaboration and resource sharing whenever possible. Like Paula mentioned, there's over 6,000 organizations in this province. So that's a lot of folks that are looking for money, looking for volunteer hours, looking for people to be engaged. So the biggest thing is try to think about what does collaboration mean and how might you engage with that. And the last thing around career for me is I know there's a book about it and maybe someone on the panel can remind me, but someone gave me the example around the lily pad in a nonprofit versus corporate or business. With business, you can kind of incrementally grow on a ladder. If you're in an organization, you start at the lower end, kind of like an accounting firm, you start associate, you move up to partner. In nonprofit, sometimes if you're looking for leadership, you really have to jump lily pads. So you're in the same pond or you're in the same lake, but you kind of have to shift from organization to organization sometimes to get to the next level if you're looking for leadership or development. If you're happy on your lily pad and you're learning and you're growing and you're more of a technician in the sense that you love what you're doing and you're moving forward, great. But what I have found in my career is that to move up or to continuously learn and to continuously try to develop ongoing is to jump lily pads. So you'll see multiple organizations in my background because lily pads are where I was going. So that's me. Hey. Nope,
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Heather. Brilliant. Yeah, I just was muted, so I don't have too much background.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't take up the full time, so that's good.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. No, it's all very insightful and helpful. So very good. Much appreciated. So I'll introduce our next panelist. So Kara Chisholm from We Are Young. She was having a few technical internet issues, but she's back. So maybe we'll let you go in case you have another internet glitch. Kara.
Yeah, that's no problem. Sure.
All right, welcome. We look forward to hearing your story.
Thank you. So my name is Kara Chisholm. I am one of the co-founders of a nonprofit organization called We Are Young. It is a nonprofit that grants unfulfilled wishes to seniors living within the province of Nova Scotia. We've been a nonprofit for the past 5 years and just received charitable status about 2 months ago. So it's a really exciting time for us here at the We Are Young Association. Because of COVID, of course, we can't grant our typical wish, but we have partnered with the Canadian Red Cross to deliver care packages to seniors across Nova Scotia. So we have been busy doing that and delivering packages over the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue to do so moving forward for right now.
Okay, thank you, Kara. Are you still able to, do you still have your volume and your video?
I do, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to double check. Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much. And so we'll move on to our panelist, Sarah Napier from Halifax, United Way. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing your story.
Thanks, Paula, and thanks everyone. Really happy to be here. I'll take a few minutes to walk through a few comments, and really looking forward to the Q&A time as well. So as Paula said at the beginning, I have the privilege of being the president and CEO of a nonprofit organization called United Way Halifax. And we are a local charity, and we bring together donors, volunteers, and partners. And all together, our focus is on creating social change and lasting social change in our communities. So with that in mind, our work really focuses on addressing poverty and building inclusion. And we really want to do our best to help everyone within HRM, specifically within the Halifax area, meet the basic needs and have the opportunity to have a good life. Now, I will say that when Heather was talking about larger charities and the YMCA, United Ways are a similar model. We are actually part of a national and international federated movement, and there are in Canada 79 different United Ways that are separate legal entities, but a part of a structure where we can rely on one another and support one another, and certainly have a common vision and common values that we hold true. So what we do in Halifax is we use our local expertise of community issues and of issues related, again, to poverty and inclusion. And we invest donations that come into us, and those donations can come in from workplace charitable campaigns. They can come in from individual major gifts or corporations or foundations. And we use those donations to support the changes that we want to see to help marginalized people within HRM. And we're doing that well before the COVID pandemic. We've been operating this way for actually almost, I think, over 90 years in Halifax. And we really ramped up our efforts during the height of the pandemic, and we've been continuing in our efforts ever since. So to give you a sense of what we do specifically, we fund different community-based programs based on the dollars that we have every year. So right now we would have about 35 organizations that within HRM that we fund on a multi-year basis. And we also have funded an additional 70 organizations in HRM due to elevated activity that we've undertaken due to the COVID pandemic and additional needs and strains on the sector. We also lead projects and lead research. A lot of that work is being done in regards to housing and homelessness and also regarding living wage and issues of poverty. And we do a lot of work to create community and different volunteering opportunities and different ways where people can actually connect with one another differently. And we also advocate for change, whether that's through media efforts, one-on-one meetings with government or what have you. But we are focused on doing all we can to lend our voice to different issues. And there seems to be a bit of a theme here among the entire panel of 5 years. I've also been with United Way for 5 years and just marked that earlier this month. And you know, it's interesting because when I think about what attracted me to this job, but also just attracted me to this type of work, I can say, and this may relate to many of the panelists and many of you listening with us today, that from a very young age, I've always been very connected to community. So I've always been someone who was really interested in other people, interested in what was happening in the world around me, you know, interested in human interaction, tend to be a fairly compassionate soul. And that's always something that motivated me in terms of, you know, what life is all about and the imprint that I could be having on this life. And so when I think about those values, it's always been a part of me, and that's something that even though I haven't always worked in nonprofit, I've worked in other sectors as well, that kind of value set and that community kind of connection has always been there. And that's been true, you know, like Heather, sort of volunteering at a young age, and it just kind of kept on being a part of what was really valuable for me in terms of having a meaningful life. So it's been present in my personal, professional, and volunteer roles, and also specifically since graduating with my undergrad, and my undergrad is from Mount St. Vincent University. That was 25 years ago. As I take a deep breath, you know, I've worked in community and economic development. I've worked in partnership development, communications, brand and marketing strategy, fundraising, and organizational strategy. So it's been a full kind of range of different types of workplaces, whether that was in healthcare, education, municipal government, tourism, community development, or in traditional social services and community outreach like I'm doing right now. But when I looked at that, it makes more sense to me looking backwards in my career than looking forward, because now when I see myself as working with United Way Halifax, it's this big mega kind of combination of all of those skills and all of those different experiences that I've been able to have over those 25 years to get me to now. And so it combines all of those different elements into one organization that does fundraising, that does storytelling, that does advocacy, that does community development and funding and support for community. So I feel really, really fortunate and really grateful to be in this role. And certainly one that, and a career I really recommend to everyone wholeheartedly, always to have meaning in your career. And that's often the case of what leads people to nonprofit, as others have spoken about. I also wanted to pick up on a word that Heather used, which was about entrepreneurial. And, you know, there's something about the sector, the nonprofit sector in particular, that is entrepreneurial or can feel a little bit like a startup. So, you know, like Cara has a brand new nonprofit organization, and congrats on the charitable status. It's a huge amount of work and just so important. Then you can also look at organizations that have been around for a long time. And United Way, as I mentioned, big effort and presence internationally. And our particular United Way is over 90 years old. But when I joined over 5 years ago now, just over 5 years ago, part of the attraction for me was being a part of a big change management for the organization. So we're at a point in time in our society where, you know, philanthropy overall, revenue models overall, social issues overall, and societal changes, there's so much disruption that's happening. And I think one thing that can happen within sectors that are traditionally less resourced, and that is true within nonprofit, is that there can be an unintentional complacency that can set in over time because you don't have the resources to invest in innovation or changes. And I can say in the case of my organization, that was something that just built up over time. And so there was this urgency when I was joining to say, okay, what is our sustainability? You know, what is our revenue model? Are we having the most impact that we could be having? What types of changes do we need to make? And we had to tackle all of those. And so since I've been with United Way, it's been constant change and evolution on a limited budget. But when I look at it, you know, every once in a while, you have to kind of, when you're in it, you have to pause and kind of just float up and then look back down. It's like, oh yeah, okay, this is a changed organization based on all of the accumulation of those efforts that have happened over the past number of years. And certainly, as an example, when you think about the arrival of COVID-19, you know, everyone has had to figure out how to further adjust operations, and that's certainly been the case for us in terms of digital presence and operations, as well as so much more in terms of all of the stakeholders that have been affected, but also in terms of the programming that we've been funding in community, because the adaptation is across the board a priority for everyone to make sure that no matter the circumstances, nonprofits are serving those who need support in our communities. And that's the thing that I think can often happen in the nonprofit sector, is that despite stresses and strains, there's a hopeful mindset that guides leadership. And even on those bad days, and there are bad days, it is not utopia, there is stresses that we all experience. And sometimes there's a counterbalance of passion. You know, when you're passionate about a cause, you can also, single-mindedness can sometimes lead to some stresses as well, because there's just so much passion to want to do good that, you know, it's really important to remind yourself of those common linkages and to really be centered in the overall impact that we're all able to contribute to our communities. So when I think about the key roles and responsibilities and how they have changed over time, so the period of time that I'm thinking of is just 5 years with United Way, but I can also link back even when I was in healthcare with the IWK Health Center and some other organizations, seeing some of these issues change over years. But some of the most important areas of focus from my time is strategy leadership, board governance. I have a board of about 20 individual engagement, and this is a critical piece of governance and stewardship and growth of the organization of our movement. Staff leadership and engagement, fundraising and revenue diversification strategy and execution. I will say we are, as a United Way movement, we are 100% funded by donors. And so we're not, we've had very little government involvement over the years. Our model has been based on donations that come into us compared to, there's many different types of nonprofits that have different models, but that happens to be our particular model. There's a lot of public speaking, a lot of relations and meetings with donors, business development partnerships, financial oversight, change management, issue and problem solving. That's something that Allison spoke about. If you like solving problems, being a nonprofit is a great place to be able to tackle either societal problems, but also to be able to tackle how to make something happen with what can often be limited resources and heightened scenarios. So I also tend to do quite a bit of mediation as well through all of that work. So just to wrap up with a few final comments, you know, in terms of what I love the most about nonprofit organizations and what's the most rewarding and exciting, and others have spoken about this, it's the opportunity to be a part of community change. I mean, there's Again, you can connect to community change in so many different sectors in different ways, but you will not be able to connect as directly, and Allison used this phrase, to social justice or issues that need to be addressed in your community that you can really live and breathe if you are not in the nonprofit sector squarely. And that is a privilege and something that I'm very grateful for. I love working with our donors and donors who want to be contributing really meaningfully to community. And you can be even in the phase of co-creation. You know, what does a donor want to do or a philanthropist want to do? And how does that line up with the mandate of what your organization does and what you see for community? Those are brilliant conversations and really special there's collaboration and interaction, and we really need to rely on each other in really important ways to keep moving forward with momentum. And I'll just quickly mention the creativity, the adaptability. Again, Allison mentioned that it's so important to have a mindset of openness in the nonprofit sector, and I think that entrepreneurial spirit and just that kind of that real ability to just jump in but you have to thrive on change. You have to thrive on some of that. In some ways, I wouldn't necessarily say unpredictability, but a constant change and a lot of factors that are within control and many factors that are not within control. In terms of if you are considering a career in nonprofit, you will learn and grow every day. You know, Heather spoke about that. No question, that's something that is continues to be a gift, and sometimes difficult too, because it's often in those big challenges that you're encountering that you're learning the most. But those are good formative experiences to have. And it's also, you know, really important that, you know, you can partner and collaborate and develop again that mindset where I'm seeing more and more organizations and nonprofits partner together on common issues. So rather than solely staying focused on the organization that you work for, you know, staying focused on the mission, the purpose you're trying to achieve, and that helps you, I think, look for achieving greater things together. So it's more in that spirit of don't have ambition for self, but have ambition for good, and that's an important distinction, the type of ambition that occurs in the nonprofit sector. I would also say what's something that's very interesting is that there's more diversity in the nonprofit sector than in other sectors. So more cultural diversity. It's predominantly women in terms of leadership roles in the nonprofit sector. But even if you think of Nova Scotia, we have more, for example, African Nova Scotians and more immigrants working in the nonprofit sector than in other sectors. So there's a lot of interesting conversation and learnings and perspectives that are part of the work every day as well. And that, you know, you need to have the meaning and that connection to purpose that is clear and genuine. And as I mentioned before, that will ground you. But also, I want you to walk in with eyes wide open that working in nonprofit is not utopia. It's still a choice, and there are hard choices that you have to make every day. There are stresses, there are conditions or political considerations, or so many other things. Even from being a staff to board organization, there are different contexts and different circumstances often that guide your work. So it's I think have the vision, be genuine, but also remember that it's still something that it requires a lot of persistence, requires patience, and requires a dedication that keeps you focused on what you're aiming to achieve in the end. But having that openness to realize that there's going to be hard stuff along the way, and that's a part of the journey that makes it so important. That's where all the learnings will be, but they exist. Just because we do good work does not mean that everything is going to be it's hard work. It's really hard work, and it's important even for those who work in corporate and other sectors to understand that people who work in nonprofit have many stakeholders to consider, and I'd say even many more than traditional sectors. And it requires that resilience, that dedication, and a really, really strong heart and head. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. That was brilliant. Thank you for your wisdom and your insight and sharing your journey. So we'll, at this point, we'll open the floor, make sure the students attending know that they can type their questions in, and Alexandra will see those behind the scenes, or you can raise your hand and then we'll she'll unmute you and you'll be able to ask panelists a question. So while I'm waiting to hear from Alexandra, I've got some of the previous questions that were sent in. I just want to touch base with our panelists to get their input in. So our students today are from a whole range of disciplines. They're from biology, psychology, computer science, education, environmental science, marketing, nutrition, women and gender studies, development studies, sociology, political science, business, accounting, finance, writing, kinesiology, English. So that'll give you like a sense of the whole range of disciplines that are here today. So a number of questions came in about how you see someone from that discipline fitting into the nonprofit organization you're either with now or in the nonprofit sector in general. And then there's also the nonprofit with a social enterprise connected to it, which might be relevant to some of these disciplines. And I know, Sarah, you mentioned kind of there can be a business aspect to some of the nonprofit work, especially if it's connected to a social enterprise. So maybe I'll just do a quick round table to kind of get an answer from the four of you to those questions, because there's quite a few interested in wondering about how they specifically in their background could connect to the nonprofit sector. So let's start, maybe we'll start with Allison. Maybe do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. I jumped from marine biology to the world of the nonprofit sector. Some of that, like Heather mentioned, was because of my volunteer experience and the work that I'd done volunteering. But also, no matter what you do, you have transferable skills. So skills that you can take from one career sector and move them to another career sector. So sometimes you might be doing exactly what you were trained for all the time, and sometimes you might be taking pieces of what you were trained for and pieces of what you're good at and applying them in a different way than what you may have expected that you'd be doing. But it doesn't mean, I remember when I made the switch, my dad was like, you mean all that money we invested in marine biology is going down the drain? And I was like, no, Dad, I learned lots of skills that will help me.
Brilliant, thank you. Heather, do you want to share your insights on that?
Yeah, I think kind of like Allison, it kind of relates to my organization right now, but I started in music. So I'm a soprano singer, and my dad was shaking his head when I started in music, but made a switch. And the biggest thing that comes to mind is there are so many types of nonprofits. There are science nonprofits, there's math nonprofits, there's animal nonprofits, there's a huge surplus of incredible environmental organizations. There's probably something for everyone in terms of your skills and background. And some of these nonprofits are looking for biologists, are looking for therapists or youth workers or support team. So it doesn't necessarily, a lot of us are in leadership roles here in terms of an executive director position, but there are many different career avenues in the nonprofit sector that require a lot of different skills, and no one in my organization has the same background whatsoever. It's kind of amazing where we all meet in the middle in terms of community, us wanting to make an impact or wanting to develop or support a community. And community could look like the ocean and fish, or community could look like youth or animals, or like Sarah's organization supporting other organizations and community. So many different definitions to what community impact can look like. And I'd say every single one of those career paths you mentioned, just on the top of my head, there's an organization out there that is looking for someone that would be willing to share that skill set. And totally agree with Allison around transferable skills. You can get it from anything. So anything you invest time into learning, I believe, can be transferred into other areas.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to share your insight on that topic? And then, oh, maybe perhaps your screen is frozen just momentarily. So we'll wait for her screen to unfreeze. Kara, do you want to share your thoughts on that with all the backgrounds here today?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it goes hand in hand with what Heather and Allison touched on. All of your passions and what you're working towards, they all kind of coincide to be able to give you the knowledge base that you need to move forward. I know I started out with a Bachelor of Science, and I took my love of science and I went on to do a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition. And then after that, I still volunteered in nursing homes and in various care facilities because I loved working with the aging population. And at that time, I then went to Mount St. Vincent and I did a Bachelor of Arts with a concentration in gerontology. So I loved being in school, I loved being a student, and I loved all of the different things that I've learned to get me where I am today. Did I ever think that the nonprofit sector was where I would be? Absolutely not. I just kept following my passions, and I know Sarah had mentioned this earlier, is that if you're passionate about something and you're willing to put in the work, you're going to be successful. And taking all of your different backgrounds and the things that you love or the things that you find interesting and honing in on those skills, they'll get you very far in the nonprofit sector, because every sector is different. Everybody's looking for something. Even if you follow through with a science degree or biology or kinesiology, whatever that looks like, but you still want to maybe do a little bit of work in a nonprofit sector. Nonprofit organizations are always looking for somebody for advice. I know with us, we have advisory groups, and we have an elder advisory group that we meet with to get their feedback on what we're doing and things like that. So for us anyways, we're always looking for other views on where we're going with what we do in our organization. So I think it is very important to follow your interests and follow your passions. And if the nonprofit sector is something that you're interested in, I mean, you're off to a great start.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate it. Sarah, would you like to share some thoughts on all the wide variety of disciplines? Yeah.
Yes, very quickly. Even just within my one organization, we have 22 people on staff. To give a sense, 2 people have PhDs, 6, including me, have master's degrees, and it's all kinds of different disciplines. And there's lots of different bachelor degrees as well, of course. And we've got business, planning, finance, public admin, law, marketing, public policy, public admin, PR, psychology. So, I mean, it's just, you never know. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. We have a couple of questions. I think we'll be able to squeeze them in, being mindful of our time together. There's one directly for you, Sarah. One of our students asked, how often do you make an impact in policy when you have meetings with politicians, etc.?
That's a long answer, or there could be a very long answer here. But I mean, I think it's about persistence. So for example, we right now we're working. There's a collective of people coming together in Halifax, thinking about looking at the current housing crisis that has been exacerbated by COVID-19. what's the short-term plan, what's the long-term plan, midterm, and what's the long-term plan. So this involves talking with your MPs, talking with staff in federal, municipal, and provincial offices, proposals, letters of support, presentations to provincial caucuses, plus think tanks, and helping and bringing like constant communication with staff. So in terms of making progress, yes, we make progress, but progress is slow. And progress gets slower when there's more and more partners and more players involved. That doesn't, however, stop us from trying. And I'm sure that others would echo that same kind of thinking. You keep on going and you figure it out. And there have been some really good policy changes. We did, a few years ago, I mentioned living wage. We did a living wage report in Halifax of what does it take to live a good life in Halifax, or at least an adequate life from an income point of view. And we know that at the time of the report, I think it was $20.10 an hour was the rate that was needed for someone to live reasonably. And that wasn't necessarily being paid $20.10 an hour, but it's what are all of the inputs that help to create that picture, from childcare, transportation, food costs, rent, everything else, income. And we know that when the child tax benefit came in, that living wage went down to $19.17. You know, so when different changes happen, when you're pulling on different pillars, things happen. So it's, anyway, whoever asks a question would love to talk offline about all kinds of this stuff and how it works. And so just consider that an open invitation.
Okay, appreciate it. So being mindful of people's time, we just have 1 minute left. And I think we had shared with the students that we wouldn't necessarily get to everyone's questions given the time, but I'm just going to do a few closing remarks because we are going to be communicating with students after the webinar is over. So that's an ideal time to share some information with them. So I guess in closing, I want to thank all our panelists. It was very gracious of you to share your time and share your stories for the benefit of students. They'll be here, the ones that are intended, but we're also going to be uploading this to our website. So this will be available to students across the province at any given time, so that your stories are a legacy, and so they'll be able to access them and gain the wisdom and insight that you've shared today. So that's very much appreciated. And then I want to thank all our students who were attended today. Thanks very much for taking an interest and kind of seeking out some information about a nonprofit career. So for students, we are going to be sending out a quick survey right after this. So there'll be a brief couple of question survey about the webinar itself, and then we're going to be following up an email to you with some information and our website, and you can always visit our website at any time to find out more information. And also there's links there where you can search for jobs, so check back regularly. There's lots of opportunity there. So I want to thank everyone, and I appreciate your time, and that wraps up our time together. So I want to wish everyone a fabulous weekend. It looks like there'll be some lovely sun on Sunday anyway to get outside and enjoy, and much appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to sign off now, and thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right, bye for now, everyone. Have a fabulous weekend.
You too.
You too.
Okay, bye now.